My daughter Joanna told me she was doing really well. She described her husband Todd as the sweetest man on earth, always quick to make her morning coffee and never letting her lift a finger around the house. She said he'd come get her when it rained, whip up homemade chicken soup when she was feeling under the weather, and whenever her mood shifted, he'd perform his silly little husband dance just to make her laugh. I listened and smiled, trying to keep my expression as natural as possible, but I gripped the edge of my phone tightly the entire time we were on that video call. Her face was pale, not just fair-skinned, but the kind of pale that comes from harsh fluorescent hospital lights. Her lips curved into a smile, yet her eyes, they were hollow and dull, like someone had switched off the light inside her. This was the third time she'd said, "I caught the flu, so I'm in the hospital." Before that, it was a stomach bug, and earlier still, she'd fallen down the stairs. But Joanna has always been the most careful person I know. She used to clutch the handrail even to go down a few steps. There's just no way she could have fallen like that. And the stomach pains were severe enough to require IV fluids, but she brushed it off, blaming it on too much dessert last night. I've been a mother long enough not to be fooled by that. I can recognize the sound of a lie told to keep me from worrying. A lie tangled in fear and guilt. "Don't always assume the worst, Mom," she said softly, a little laugh in her voice from the other end. "I'm really okay. Stop overthinking." I just nodded. Didn't push further. If I don't ask, she'll keep talking, and the more she talks, the more pieces fall into place. But she was quicker than I expected 3 minutes in. She ended the call quietly with, "I should go get something to eat. Let's talk later." The moment the screen went black, a heavy weight settled in my chest. I don't believe her. She says she's happy, but I just don't believe it. That night, I called my son Jason. He was half distracted, pressing buttons on his game controller while answering, "Mom, you're overthinking this." "Didn't Joanna already tell you plenty of times? Todd treats her well. They're fine." "But she's always in the hospital," I said. "Doesn't that strike you as odd?" "She's always been a bit fragile," Jason shrugged, and I could hear it in his voice. "Remember when she was a kid? Always stomach aches. That's just how she is." He chuckled. "Besides, I know Todd the guy's awkward and shy. Definitely not the type to hurt anyone." I stayed silent. He didn't notice. Still laughing softly, he added, "Wait, you're not seriously thinking of driving over there, are you? That's like a 3-hour trip." "Yes," I said simply. "I am." That caught him off guard. His tone changed. "Wait, you're actually serious?" "Jason, this isn't me being dramatic." I sat under the kitchen light, my hand resting on a printed bus ticket. "She's my daughter. A mother knows when her child is lying, just like a bird senses when the wind is about to shift." "But she told you not to come." "She told me she's fine," I interrupted, and then told me not to worry 3 times. Each time, her eyes flickered a little more. He fell silent for a moment. When he spoke again, his voice softened. "Just be careful, okay?" The next morning, I didn't tell Joanna. Didn't tell anyone I boarded a long-distance bus headed for Cedar Falls. I packed light, nothing to raise suspicion. Just 3 sets of clothes, a small notebook, and my 30 years of mother's intuition. She said she was fine, but she was in the hospital. He said she fell, but she limped. She claimed it was just bad luck, but her eyes looked like a frightened deer, wide, glossy, scared. She lied because she didn't want me to worry, but I couldn't rest until I knew the truth. So I went looking for it. When I arrived, I didn't go straight to her apartment. Instead, I checked into a modest motel just across the street. The front desk clerk greeted me with a warm smile. "Here for a little getaway, ma'am?" I smiled back. "Just visiting my daughter." Truth was, I didn't even know if I'd get to see her. Her apartment complex, Willow Creek, was upscale and secure, cameras on every corner, a doorman at the front desk. No way an uninvited visitor could just walk in, but I wasn't in a hurry. I could wait. I found a seat at the outdoor patio of a cafe across the street, ordered a latte, milk, no sugar, and kept my eyes glued to the building's entrance while slowly sipping. 1 hour passed, then 2. The sun sank lower. Still no sign of Joanna. I texted her. "What are you up to, sweetheart?" She answered almost immediately. "Working late again, Mom. Don't worry about me." But I'd been watching that door all afternoon, and Joanna hadn't stepped out once, not even a shadow, at 9 p.m. I returned. This time I stood right at the building's front steps, eyes locked on the entrance, not daring to blink. Then a voice behind me cut through the quiet, husky, sharp, and suspicious. "Hey, you with the FBI or something?" I nearly jumped, spun around, and found myself looking at an older woman in pajama pants, fuzzy slippers, and a silky robe. Her silver hair was piled high on her head. In one hand, she held a cat leash, though no cat was attached. "Excuse me?" She squinted at me, studying me for a long moment, then leaned in as if we were sharing state secrets. "Or maybe you're a private eye? I've been watching you all afternoon, girl. Even the neighbor's dog doesn't stake out this place like you." I couldn't help but laugh. "No, I'm just—" She clapped her hands. "Say no more. I'm on your side. If you're here to catch a cheater, I won't say a word. I can't stand that guy in 4B. Always out on the balcony late at night, smoking like he owns the building." "The whole place smells like ash," Margie said. The next morning, I laughed. Really laughed. For the first time in 2 days, she reached out her hand. Margie Thompson, retired schoolteacher, vice president of the Neighborhood Gossip League, and a coffee lover to boot. "I'm happy to share any info that serves justice." I took her hand firmly. "Madison Dawson, I'm here to protect my daughter and uncover the truth." Her expression shifted, eyes sharpening with a glimmer of understanding. "Your daughter lives here?" she asked softly. I nodded but stayed silent. She settled down on the stone steps beside me, thoughtful. "I had a feeling something wasn't right in that apartment lately." My breath caught. "What did you hear?" She leaned closer. "Last Wednesday, around 2 a.m., I was up getting water. The balcony door wasn't fully latched, and I heard voices outside. At first, I thought it was just a couple arguing, but then—" She hesitated, lowering her voice. It stopped sounding like an argument. Her face tightened. There was crashing and a woman sobbing, begging. My fingers curled instinctively into fists. Margie turned to me, her voice gentle now. "Your daughter, the quiet one, right? Long hair, keeps to herself, barely talks to anyone?" I nodded again. She sighed. She seemed like the type who'd bottle up her pain. "It's a shame this place looks fancy, but trust me, it's full of men in suits with rotten hearts." My eyes stung. Margie patted my knee. "But you're here now. You did the right thing. I might be slow on my feet, but my ears are everywhere. I walk my cat around the building 3 times a day. I know when every houseplant gets watered." I couldn't help it. I laughed again. She smiled. "I'll be out front tomorrow at 7 a.m., catching the sunrise. If you need anything, just find me." "Thank you, Margie." "Don't thank me, justice is my duty," she said with mock pride, sitting straighter. Then she leaned in and whispered, "But seriously, that man creeps me out. I always knew he was bad news. Even his eyebrows look like a TV villain's." I laughed again. For the first time, I didn't feel completely alone that night. I didn't return to the motel. Instead, I spent the evening in a nearby 24-hour diner. The lighting was dim, just bright enough to read the sticky note in my hand. Joanna's apartment access code, she'd mentioned it casually. Once I jotted it down without thinking, never imagining I'd actually use it. But the voice in my head was growing louder and clearer. She wasn't happy. She was hiding her unhappiness. And I wasn't just here for the truth. I was here to get her out. I lost track of how many times I checked the front of the building that day. Maybe the 7th time. Margie gently tapped my arm and whispered, "He's gone, dark gray suit, car keys in hand. Looks like he left in a hurry, left shoe untied." I looked up at her. She looked more energized than the day before, wearing a clean sweater, and I caught a faint scent of floral perfume. "You going in?" she asked. I nodded, committing the code from the sticky note to memory. Margie leaned in, lowering her voice. "If you're not out in 30 minutes, I'm calling the cops. And don't worry about me overreacting. I'm the only one in this building with 2 official police reports." I gave a weak smile. "That makes you my most reliable backup." Crossing the street, my palms sweated. The keypad trembled under my fingers as I punched in the code. When the lock clicked and the door released, I nearly forgot to breathe. The hallway was eerily silent, like walking through a tunnel lined with thick velvet. The elevator ride felt slower than the day before. I could hear my heartbeat pounding in my ears. At her floor, I stood before the door for a moment, then without knocking, entered the code. The door swung open inside. The apartment was dimly lit. A soft blue glow from an air purifier hummed quietly in the corner. The curtains were drawn tight. The air was stale, heavy with the smell of old medicine and something faintly rotten. On the coffee table sat a bowl with dried soup crusted at the bottom, strands of hair clinging to its rim. One sofa cushion was sunken in, its edges frayed and worn. Everything felt lifeless. A wedding photo hung on the wall. Joanna smiled stiffly while Todd stared into the camera, not with love but suspicion. As if guarding some secret, I slowly opened the bedroom door. Joanna sat motionless at the edge of the bed, her back to me. Her hair was tangled, draped over her shoulders. A bandage wrapped around her swollen right ankle. Her hands clutched the blanket like it was her only lifeline. "Joanna," I whispered. When she turned, I nearly broke down in tears. Her face was gaunt, lips pale. A bruise lingered beneath her left eye, yellowing but unmistakable. Her soft gray eyes were empty, dulled to ash. But when she saw me, the numbness cracked, replaced by panic. "Mom, what are you doing here?" Her voice was hoarse, rough like sandpaper scraping her throat. I stepped closer and gently wrapped my arms around her. She flinched, pulling away slightly. "You shouldn't be here. If he finds out, he'll lose it. He'll go crazy." "Joanna," I cupped her face, "you're not safe here. You can't stay alone in this place anymore." She lowered her head, tears falling one by one onto my hand. "He locks the door from the outside," she whispered. "Unplug the landline." "My phone. He only lets me call approved numbers. I'm only allowed to FaceTime you from the hospital because he knows there'll be people around." "That's the only reason he allows me to do it," she murmured. "Why didn't you call the police?" I pressed her voice lowered to a whisper, forcing me to lean in closer just to catch it. "I tried," she admitted, "but he convinced them I was unstable. When the officers handed me water, he secretly slipped something into it, my sedatives. Then he coerced me into signing a guardianship consent form, said if I resisted, they'd lock me away." As she spoke, she buried her face deeper in the blanket. I was burning with fever. A nurse brought a pile of paperwork. He stood right by my side, watching my every move. I couldn't even make out what I was signing. Later, when I resisted, he flashed those papers, said I'd legally made him my psychiatric guardian, giving him power to commit me involuntarily. The room seemed to tilt and spin. He hadn't just abused her body. He'd wrapped her in a legal trap, polished and hidden beneath a veil of concern. She was trapped now, locked inside a cage of lies and paperwork. 2 weeks ago, he shoved me down the stairs, she said, voice trembling. Told the doctor I was clumsy, but the doctor saw through it, warned me that if I spoke up, he'd have someone come after you. Her lips quivered. Mom, I was terrified. I thought he really might hurt you. I didn't want anything bad to happen to you. I reached out, gently stroking her hair. You don't need to worry, sweetheart. You can't hurt me. You did all you could, Joanna. You're stronger than you realize. And now I'm here. I'm going to keep you safe. Her voice cracked as she added, I went to the hospital once after that, but he forced the doctor to sign a confidentiality agreement. One nurse slipped me a copy of the report I hid it. My eyes sharpened. Where is it? She hesitated, then nodded toward the nightstand. I opened the drawer and found a torn manila folder tucked beneath an old scarf. Inside was a worn medical report dated 2 weeks earlier. It read, right ankle fracture, likely caused by external trauma. I carefully folded the report and slipped it into my bag. Put on some shoes. Take my coat, we're leaving right now. Right now? She blinked, surprised. Yes. The sooner, the better. Margie will stall the front desk. I draped my coat over her shoulders and grabbed a scarf from the couch to wrap around her neck. She tried to stand but cried out sharply, her whole body tensing. I can't walk, she said, voice breaking. Mom, I can't even stand. I glanced at the clock, hesitated just a moment, then crouched and hoisted her onto my back. As we neared the apartment door, an elevator ding sounded, followed by a harsh buzzing. The display above read, "Out of service. Maintenance." I clenched my jaw and turned toward the stairs. Step by step, I carried her down. Each flight hammered at my spine. My arms shook, my breath came in short gasps, but I'd never been more certain in my life. Her cheek rested softly on my shoulder, and in a whisper barely audible, she said, "I'm sorry, Mom." I bit my lip to hold back tears. "You're my daughter." You never have to apologize for needing help. I carried her, my daughter, who once laughed freely, now battered and bruised, away from the lie she'd been told was a marriage. We reached the lobby. As I moved to push open the doors, the front desk clerk called out, "Ma'am, are you all right? You don't look well." I forced a shaky smile. "Thank you. This is my daughter. She had a drop in blood sugar. I'm just getting her home to rest." He seemed about to ask more, brows furrowed, until Margie suddenly appeared, waving energetically. "Susan, you finally made it out. Come on, I've been waiting forever," she called, cheerful as ever. Then she turned to the clerk, grabbing his attention. "Young man, could you check if my cat slipped out the back door again? She's fast as lightning." While he was distracted, I limped us through the doors, one arm around Joanna's back, the other guiding us to the rental car parked around the corner. I opened the rear door and gently helped her inside. She clung to my arm, eyes closed, lips barely moving. Mom, you really came," she whispered. I wrapped the blanket tighter around her and kissed her forehead. "I promise, sweetheart, no one will ever hurt you again." 10 minutes later, Todd came home humming a tune, holding a takeout bag in one hand. He tapped the keypad and pushed the door open. "Joanna?" No answer. He stepped into the bedroom and froze. The blanket was missing from the bed. The closet door stood wide open. Drawers were emptied. The medical report folder still lay on the coffee table, but its contents were gone. His face darkened incrementally, fists clenched tight. "Joanna!" His voice echoed angrily through the apartment, but no one answered. I drove all the way to Spring Hill, a small town we'd called home for over 20 years. It didn't even have a Starbucks, but the skies were calm and the air familiar. I could navigate its streets and corners with my eyes closed. Joanna sat quietly in the passenger seat, gazing out the window, the wind tossing her hair, but the shadow in her eyes remained. By the time we arrived, dusk was settling. My house was an old 2-bedroom cottage I'd restored myself, simple and quiet, with a small vegetable garden in the backyard. She used to complain about the weak Wi-Fi out here, but now, standing in the doorway like a bird barely returned to its nest, she said nothing. She leaned against the frame and stared silently for a long while. I changed the bed linens and made her favorite creamy chicken soup, the one she loved as a child. She ate one bowl and nothing else. That night, she didn't even enter the bedroom. She curled up on the worn sofa in the corner of my room, wrapped snugly in a blanket, and drifted off to sleep around midnight. Soft murmurs stirred me awake. I leaned closer, straining to catch the words. Her voice was faint and broken. "Don't lock the door. I promise I won't run." I sat beside her, clasped her hand in mine, and stayed there through the night, my eyes refusing to close the following morning. I brought her to the community clinic in town. The nurse on duty was Tracy, an old friend of mine, sharp-tongued and even sharper in intuition, someone I trusted completely. "You actually brought her back," she muttered, slipping on her gloves. "I saw her husband on Facebook recently, posting those devoted husband photos like he's some kind of saint." "All lies," I said flatly. Tracy rolled her eyes. I could tell from the start he was trash guys like that carry narcissism in every step. She examined Joanna's ankle, her face turning serious. "This isn't just a sprain, it's direct trauma, blunt force, probably from a fall. Your daughter didn't trip, someone did this." I nodded, voice steady. "I've been honest with you, Tracy. I need your help to find proof she was treated at Cedar Falls Memorial. I want her records." She arched an eyebrow. "Not through the front door. You won't, not without her written consent. But I can poke around the edges of the system, see what's lurking in the corners." I handed over the torn medical report. She leaned over it, fingertips tracing the worn edges. This paper code matches. Definitely from Cedar Falls Memorial, looks like neurosurgery department. My heart skipped a beat. Neurosurgery? She never mentioned that. Tracy frowned. Want me to contact the attending physician? I can dig up a name. I leaned in. Do you know anyone there? Someone inside, off the books? She glanced sideways, lowering her voice. My cousin transferred there last year, works front desk in the ER. I'll see what I can get from her. For the first time in days, I felt a breath of hope. I just need records, dates, prescription names, even a screenshot. With that, I can talk to a lawyer. Tracy nodded. Be careful. If he's got any sense, he'll start watching you. I gripped the torn report, voice cold. Then let's see who's faster. True to her word, by the next afternoon, she texted me. There's a record ER intake and imaging data in the system. My sister grabbed a screenshot. I was sitting on a bench in my backyard when I opened the message, hands trembling as the image loaded grainy, but I didn't need clarity. Joanna's name, and the date jumped out at me, the very week she told me she'd slipped and fallen. The screenshot showed a scan marked incomplete. No need to guess why Todd would never have allowed that test. What did it mean? Her injuries were never fully documented. Still, the system held the registration record, and that was enough. I told Tracy to contact the doctor who treated Joanna and ask if they'd be willing to call me that evening. My phone rang. An unfamiliar number. Hello, is this Joanna Miller's mother? The voice was calm, professional, and gentle. This is Dr. Patrick from Cedar Falls Memorial ER. I was the attending physician that night. Your daughter claimed she'd fallen, but we suspected possible domestic violence. She was evasive and refused to name anyone involved, so we logged only a preliminary report later. Her husband called to cancel her follow-up. I gripped the phone tighter. That preliminary report, can I get a copy? He paused. Officially, only the patient can request that with a signed release. But I understand your situation. I can prepare an informal treatment summary, a basic note describing her condition. It won't hold up legally, but it's something. That's fine, I said. It's all I need for now. I'll write it by hand on personal stationery, he said. Fax it directly, no hospital system involved. I knew what that meant. He was risking a lot for us. I gave him Tracy's home fax number and thanked him. Hanging up, a small wave of relief eased through my chest. Meanwhile, miles away in Cedar Falls, Todd stood frozen in his living room, face like stone. The apartment was in chaos. Drawers thrown open, cushions flipped, floor under the bed swept clean. But the one thing he sought, the medical report Joanna never copied, was gone. He grabbed his phone and dialed building security. Doesn't the building have 24-hour surveillance? His voice was low and furious. Pull the footage Tuesday night, 8 to 9 p.m. I want to see who came through the front door and who went down my hallway. He hung up and eyed a sticky note on the counter. A faded string of digits familiar, but not his "that number," Joanna had once said casually. In case Mom ever needs to come, I gave her the code. Todd's eyes turned icy. He opened his laptop, searched Susan's address, cross-referenced her registration info. Spring Hill. Seconds later, he was out the door, back inside. Joanna lay curled on the couch, wrapped in a blanket, staring out the window. Something was clearer in her eyes now. Less fog, less fear. When she noticed me, she asked softly, "Mom, are you okay?" I sat beside her and pulled out the screenshot. "Sweetheart, we've got our first piece of evidence." She said nothing, only leaned her head gently on my shoulder. "We've still got a long way to go," I whispered softly, "but I promise you're not walking this path alone anymore." She gave a gentle nod and murmured, "Thank you, Mom." Just as I was about to reply, my phone buzzed. It was a message from Margie. "A strange man called my house a few minutes ago, said he was looking for your daughter." His tone felt off. She didn't name him, but I didn't need her to. I knew exactly who it was. Todd, faster than I anticipated, I kept the message from Joanna. She'd only just started eating again, sleeping through the night without waking in fear I wasn't about to pull her back into that nightmare. Not now. Instead, I calmly slipped the phone away, stood up, and drew every curtain closed. I locked the kitchen door, then leaned against the front door and slid the old deadbolt into place. This house didn't have fancy security, but every metallic click brought a small measure of comfort against the threat outside next. I went to the bedroom, opened an old storage box, and dug to the bottom. I pulled out a worn address book and flipped through until I found the name. Dr. Patrick. I dialed the number listed. It went straight to voicemail. His private line, I left a message. Hello, Dr. Patrick. This is Joanna's mother. A friend warned me someone is searching for us. I don't know if he'll contact you, but if he does, please tell him you have no authorization to release any medical records. You once promised to help us. I need you to hold on to every document, and note I'll be at the hospital tomorrow at 10 a.m. Hanging up, I realized my palm was slick with sweat the next morning. I acted as if everything was normal. I prepared breakfast as usual, frying eggs with extra black pepper, Joanna's favorite way as a child. While the coffee brewed, I tapped the lid louder than needed, just enough for her to hear, a quiet reminder that she wasn't alone. She emerged from her room wearing a new sweater. She looked better, still tired, but steadier. Mom, she said slowly, I've been thinking maybe I should report him. I paused, surprised. Are you sure? She nodded, then shook her head. I don't know, I know running isn't the answer, but I'm scared if I report him, he'll get worse. I sat beside her, voice calm but firm. You don't have to decide today, but I can help you do one thing. We'll gather everything, every piece of evidence, seal it in an envelope and keep it safe. So when you're ready, whether to call the police or see a lawyer, you'll have what you need. Her eyes welled up softly, redness creeping along the edges. Did something happen? She whispered, You seem different today. I hesitated, then offered a softer truth. Nothing happened, sweetheart. You're safe. I promise, leave the rest to me. She didn't press further. Instead, she stepped forward and wrapped her arms around me. For a long, quiet moment, we held each other meanwhile. In the heart of Spring Hill, a gray sedan cruised slowly down Main Street. Todd sat behind the wheel, one arm resting on the open window, eyes scanning the sleepy storefronts and tree-lined sidewalks. He'd spent the morning asking around for my address, not directly. Instead, he circled town twice, learning the layout, watching outside the local pharmacy. He spotted me stepping out with a small bag of first aid supplies. He didn't get out. He raised his phone, snapped a photo, then opened his messaging app and typed, She's in Spring Hill. But he didn't send it. He deleted the message that evening. After dinner, I sat next to Joanna and said, Sweetheart, I called my cousin. She has a guest house near Eugene. There's a vacancy this week, a quiet place with beautiful views. I thought maybe you could go for a few days to rest. Joanna paused. You want me to leave? No, just for a little while, I replied, folding clothes into a bag. I don't feel right letting you stay here any longer. She frowned. Didn't you say Spring Hill was safe? I wasn't lying, I met her gaze. But sometimes the safest places are the easiest to find. She hesitated. What about you? I smiled faintly. I'll stay behind, tie up loose ends. You know that's always been my specialty. She looked ready to argue, but in the end, just nodded. The next morning, I booked her a bus ticket under a neighbor's name. As Joanna stepped onto the bus, I stood on the curb and waved until it disappeared around the corner. Only then did I turn and walk away, but I didn't go home. Instead, I crossed the street to an old cafe beside the hardware store. The owner, an old high school classmate, was retired now, running the place with quiet efficiency and a long memory. I leaned in. Did anyone see a gray car today? Plate ends in 623? He looked up and nodded. Parked across from your place this morning. Stayed about 15 minutes. Did he come to the door? Nope, but someone followed your daughter for about half a block. I let that settle, then said, Thanks. As I stepped out, I realized something. My steps were steady. I wasn't running anymore. I'd done what I needed to do that evening. I watered the garden as usual. The sun hung low. The sky was a quiet lavender. That's when Todd finally showed up. He wore a wrinkled shirt, standing just outside the fence, voice soft. Susan? I turned, expression unreadable. We need to talk, he said. I dried my hands on a rag and walked over, keeping the fence between us. My voice was calm. "You're looking for my daughter?" He smiled faintly. "I'm just worried about her well-being," he said quietly. "She's safe," I replied evenly. "You took her without telling me. No police, no notifications. That's kidnapping, illegal detention, and interfering with a mentally unstable adult." I didn't rise to his bait. Cutting him off, my voice steady as stone, I said, "Have you ever wondered why she never told you?" His smile faltered. "She's scared of you. She doesn't want to see you." I took a step closer. "You think I don't know what you've done? You don't have proof," he whispered low. "Are you sure?" For a fleeting moment, panic flickered behind his arrogance. "You're just her mother, a retired housewife. You can't beat me." I held his gaze unwaveringly. "I don't need to beat you. I just need to make you lose." He stared long and hard. His jaw twitched. Maybe a smirk, maybe a clenched threat. Then he turned and walked away. I stood still until his gray sedan vanished down the alley and disappeared around the corner. Only then did I let out a slow breath. Back inside, the facts from the doctor lay neatly on the table. The paper yellowed at the edges, but the handwriting was clear. Patient, Joanna Miller. Suspected domestic abuse. Multiple contusions and fractures. Recommends psychiatric evaluation and independent guardianship. I folded the letter carefully, slipped it into a sealed plastic bag, and locked it in a drawer. Next came the step I'd been bracing for, filing a report. Outside the police station, I gripped the evidence bag tightly. The sun pressed down, but I felt nothing but resolve. I inhaled deeply and pushed open the door. Behind the desk sat a young officer, maybe early 30s, his tired eyes telling tales of long shifts. His name tag read, "Reed." "Ma'am, how can I help you?" I placed the plastic bag on the counter, voice calm but firm. "I'm here to report domestic abuse and illegal surveillance. The victim is my daughter. The abuser is her husband, Todd Miller." He glanced at the documents inside. These include her diagnostic summary, an ER intake screenshot, and a statement from a local nurse. Everything indicates long-term abuse and psychological control. He nodded, slowly leafing through the pages, examining the story's threads. "Where is she now?" "She's with family, in a safe place," I said. "She's cooperating but isn't ready to return." He frowned. "Without her personal statement and signature, this isn't enough to file formal charges. These documents support a case but aren't a case themselves." I bit my lip. "Did you read the summary? The doctor wrote suspected domestic abuse." "Suspected isn't confirmed," he said gently but firmly. "Domestic cases can be complicated." My voice dropped, cold and low. Her ankle was broken when he pushed her downstairs. Her face was stitched. She wakes screaming, "Please don't lock the door." Does that sound complicated to you? He glanced around, lowered his voice. "I'm not saying I don't believe you, ma'am, but by protocol, we need more. I can open an initial report. If she calls us, we can record her statement and add it to the file. If the hospital cooperates, we might get an emergency protective order." I nodded. "She'll call. I'll make sure." By the time I left, my shirt was soaked with sweat. I climbed into the car and dialed Joanna's number. Her voice was steadier than I expected. "Mom, did you file?" "I did. Gave them everything. They haven't opened a case yet, but they'll document your call." A pause. "I'll do it. Tell me what to say." I was silent a moment. She used to dread any mention of Todd, but now she wanted to be heard. "You don't have to repeat me," I said softly. "Just tell your truth." Meanwhile, miles away, Todd sat in the alley behind a bar, gripping his phone tightly. He had just spoken with the hospital admin. The voice on the line was polite but firm. "We've been contacted by police regarding your wife's ER visit. All documentation is preserved. Nothing can be altered." His jaw clenched. He knew the game had changed. Susan was making her move, but he wouldn't go down quietly. Early the next morning, Joanna called the police station. Her voice trembled, but every word was clear. "This is Joanna Miller. My husband has repeatedly abused me physically and emotionally. He locked me away, cut me off from contact. No phone, deleted call history, controlled my medical records. He threatened harm to my mother if I spoke out. I'm safe with my mother's relatives now. I'm ready to cooperate and authorize police access to all my medical records. I sat with her as she spoke, hanging on every word. Her jaw clenched, her face twitched, but she didn't stop. On the other end, the officer said, "We'll update the file and request preliminary approval of a protective order." When it ended, Joanna looked at me. "Mom, you gave me the courage I'm done hiding." "I'm not crawling back into that shell," Joanna declared meanwhile at Cedar Falls Memorial Hospital. Dr. Patrick had already filed a comprehensive legal medical summary with the hospital's legal department. This time, the file was stamped legally admissible and bore Joanna's authorized electronic signature. It included her emergency room imaging scans, detailed nurse logs, the attending physician's assessment, and most importantly, a recorded conversation from that night in which Joanna unequivocally stated, "My husband pushed me." Todd's earlier attempt to obtain Joanna's medical records was documented and appended to the official report. The complete file was faxed directly to the police department. At 4:30 that afternoon, Officer Reed returned my call. "Mrs. Dawson," he said, "we've received the formal medical report along with your daughter's recording. The case has been forwarded to our superior office. An official investigation into Todd Miller is underway, and a temporary protective order has been issued. He is legally barred from coming within 300 feet of you or Joanna, effective immediately." I remained silent, exhaling deeply as if releasing weeks of held breath. "Thank you," I finally whispered. "Don't thank me," he replied. "This happened because you refused to give up. You stood up for yourself and your daughter." That evening, a courier from the police station delivered the official protection papers to my doorstep. I called Joanna with the news. That very night, she boarded a bus from Eugene and returned home. Later, I settled at the kitchen table and uncorked a bottle of red wine untouched for years. Joanna appeared from the living room. I looked up, a warm light in my eyes. "Today," I said softly, "you spoke your truth aloud for the first time." She paused, frozen momentarily. I slid a glass toward her across the table. We shared a smile and raised our glasses together. The day Todd received the official summons from the police coincided with his 37th birthday. Rumor had it he planned to celebrate with a few friends that evening, intending to announce a flashy investment in a tech startup, a showy new chapter. But just before noon, a uniformed officer appeared at his office door, handing him a red-sealed document. "Mr. Miller," the officer said calmly, "you're under investigation for domestic violence, psychological abuse, and tampering with medical records. Full cooperation is expected." Todd didn't erupt, at least not immediately. He froze for a moment before releasing a cold, flat laugh. "She's fabricating this. She's unstable. You're basing this on an informal report, for heaven's sake." "The report has since been amended and certified by the attending physician," the officer responded evenly. "Additionally, your wife authorized the full disclosure of her medical records during a recorded call. Multiple documents now indicate a consistent pattern of abuse." Todd remained silent, his gaze lowering, fists clenched so tightly his knuckles turned white. This time, there was no charm, no coercion to silence the truth. The ground beneath him was shifting, and he couldn't halt it. Meanwhile, Joanna and I sat in a quiet meeting room on the 3rd floor of a law office. She wore a soft cotton blouse, her hair pulled back in a low ponytail. Though still pale, she sat straighter, more composed than she had been in weeks. Opposite us sat Miss Harper, a sharp, no-nonsense attorney Tracy had referred us to. She specialized in domestic abuse and wasted no words. After swiftly reviewing our documents, she looked up. "The police have secured a temporary restraining order. Once the district attorney files charges, we can pursue civil action, seeking damages for emotional distress and requesting a freeze on a portion of his assets." Joanna's voice was quiet. "Will I have to go to court?" Harper nodded. "Most likely. Once, for a hearing. You won't need to detail everything. Just confirm your willingness to provide evidence. We'll handle the rest." I reached over, squeezing Joanna's hand. "You're not alone in this." Joanna met my gaze, eyes glossy but tearless. This time. A week later, the local news picked up the story. The headline read, "Suspected coercive abuse case advances. Mother helps daughter escape control." They withheld Todd's name, but anyone who knew him recognized the profile photo instantly. His rigid jaw, signature coat, unmistakable side profile. That evening, my phone rang. It was Margie, her voice bubbling with excitement. "I knew he was trouble," she exclaimed triumphantly. "I'm so relieved the truth's coming out. Seeing Joanna safe makes me proud of you, Susan." I smiled into the receiver. "Thank you for reaching out when you did. Without you, I might have been too late." She clicked her tongue. "Next time you submit hero paperwork, make sure to add Neighborhood Watch MVP." We laughed. Real laughter, not a mask. Todd didn't get away with it. In the end, investigators uncovered incriminating emails in his inbox, messages to Cedar Falls Memorial staff urging them to remove inaccurate records and offering compensation. Those emails became key evidence, confirming his attempt to obstruct justice. With Joanna's formal statement added, police submitted a full recommendation to prosecute. The court approved without hesitation. The trial was swift. Todd's attorney tried spinning the events as emotional conflict and accidental harm, but that defense crumbled against medical records, diagnostic reports, recorded calls, and a tight timeline. Every excuse fell apart. Though he avoided prison, Todd was sentenced to 2 years probation, mandatory psychological counseling, and strict restrictions on his public behavior. But his true punishment unfolded elsewhere. Investors swiftly withdrew from his tech venture, and the company's board voted him off. His once lively social media, buzzing with friends and professional contacts, fell eerily silent overnight. Some even removed photos featuring him altogether. No prison walls confined him, yet he faced a slow, public unraveling, the erasure of a man who once believed himself untouchable. Joanna didn't attend the trial. Instead, she sat quietly in the backyard, morning sunlight gently warming the wildflowers at her feet. She texted me, "Mom, I couldn't bear to watch him crumble, but knowing you're here, that's enough." I replied simply, "You're alive, that's the victory." When spring arrived, we moved, not to hide or vanish, but to begin anew. Our new home was a quiet house nestled near the forest's edge, featuring a small balcony where the morning light fell just so. Joanna started online courses in trauma counseling, slowly rebuilding her daily rhythm. I volunteered at the town library, sometimes reading stories to children, sometimes shelving books. Both felt like healing. One afternoon, while grocery shopping together, we saw a boy holding a too-small umbrella over his mother, half soaked while she stayed dry. I glanced at Joanna, who was watching too. Then she smiled, softly, gently. In that moment, I knew she had truly returned, not just physically, but in spirit. The real Joanna, the kind, clear-eyed, quietly strong girl I remembered, was back. People often ask, "How did you do it?" I tell them honestly, I did nothing extraordinary. No law degree, no women's rights organization, no wealth or power. Just a small-town mother who never stopped believing her child. Even when the world dismissed her as dramatic, fragile, or unstable, I knew she wasn't crazy. She was hurting. Not broken, just surviving. Me? I'm no hero. I'm simply someone who stood by her side and refused to leave. I'm Joanna, and I woke up to sunlight. The curtains were open, and soft, warm light spilled across the blanket in quiet patches. A gentle reminder, you're still here. It took a moment to realize I was lying somewhere safe. The room was small, white walls, no overhead lights, just a row of plants along the windowsill, their green leaves reaching toward the sun. A breeze slipped through a cracked window, cool but gentle. I sat up slowly. My neck was stiff. The pillow was new. Mom must have swapped it last night. Just like her to think of everything, even that. I slid my feet over the bed's edge. The wooden floor felt cool beneath my skin. Not chilling. Just a reminder I was barefoot and alive. I reached for thick socks, careful not to make a sound, as if someone might suddenly wake and be angry. Then I remembered. It's just me and Mom here. No Todd. No one to glare at me for turning on the light too early. No one snapping. Are you trying to get my attention? No one forcing me, again and again, to explain why I'd taken out the trash. I sat on the bed's edge, listening. From the kitchen came the soft clatter of lids, the hiss of the kettle heating, and Mom's quiet humming. Suddenly, tears welled, not from sadness, but from something new, something loosening and expanding in my chest. Relief, maybe. Even peace. I hadn't thought I'd ever wake to a morning like this again. But here I was. I hadn't realized I was trapped. If you asked me which words should have been red flags, I probably couldn't say. Todd was good at seeming just right, thoughtful, dependable, smart. That maturity I admired? Control. Soon after we met, he began ordering for us. "You love spicy shrimp pasta, right?" he'd say, placing the order without waiting for my answer. I didn't think it strange. I thought it was sweet. It felt like someone finally knew me. Later, he'd say, "Don't wear that skirt. It's too short. You'll catch a chill." Then, "Don't go to that coffee shop anymore. Something happened there last week. It's not safe." I'd never been in a relationship where someone took care of me like that, or rather, took over everything. I thought it was love. Now I know it was a razor. We married when I was 27. I quit my job, not because he forced me, but because he said over and over, "You complain about your job, about your boss. Why not take a break? I make enough for both of us." I remember asking, "Really? You're okay with me being a housewife?" He smiled, ruffling my hair. "Of course, you're more valuable at home than anywhere else." And I believed him. But 6 months later, when I mentioned going back to work, his face changed. "Why would you do that? Didn't we agree you'd stay home? Did you forget the plan I made for you?" That plan defined our marriage. He said I slept in too late, so he swapped our blackout curtains for sheer ones to reset my rhythm. He said I was too cooped up, so we did everything together. Workouts, errands, grocery runs. Suddenly, even a solo trip felt impossible. He said I wasn't good at making friends, and my contacts slowly shrank to just him, his mother, and 2 others. One by one, everyone else disappeared, and I barely noticed. I made excuses. He meant well, he loved me. He just showed it differently. By the time I truly grasped what was happening, I was already trapped. I couldn't move without reporting every step, couldn't read a book at night without explaining its contents. This wasn't love. It was domestication. The cruelest part? Everyone thought I was happy. He'd bring me to every party, hold my hand, smile warmly, and introduce me as, "This is my wife, Joanna." Whenever I drifted off or seemed distant, he'd place a gentle hand on my back, a tender nudge that really meant, "Fix your face. You get too emotional sometimes, baby," he'd say, tapping his fingers softly on my knee. The sound was like a slow, persistent drip, a single drop falling again and again, quietly eroding the stone beneath it. But I didn't cry out then. I thought silence would make it better. That wasn't patience. It was numbness. The day everything shifted wasn't dramatic. No raised voices, no violent outburst, just a glance at my phone that lasted a little too long. That was all. It was late afternoon. I was in the kitchen preparing dinner when my phone buzzed from the couch in the living room. I wiped my hands and walked over. It was Rose, my college roommate, who just had a baby. She'd sent a picture. I looked at it for maybe 5 seconds, maybe less. Todd emerged from his office. "Who was that?" he asked casually, as if it meant nothing. "Rose," I replied. "My college friend. She just had a baby." I smiled, setting the phone down. "You remember her, right? She was at our wedding." He nodded, but his eyes shifted uneasily. "You two been talking much lately?" I blinked. "No, not really. Not since, well, we haven't seen each other in 6 months." "Then why'd you smile like that?" I froze and suddenly noticed how close he was standing. I just thought the baby was cute." He said nothing, only stared a moment longer before turning and walking back into his office. I thought it was over. That night at dinner, he stayed silent, and so did I. After washing the dishes, I returned to the bedroom. He sat on the bed's edge, holding my phone, screen unlocked. "You changed your passcode," he said. "I updated the system," I answered, keeping calm. "The old one stopped working. And you didn't think to tell me? You know how much I hate being kept in the dark." "I wasn't hiding anything. He cut me off, tossing the phone hard onto the bed. The sound made me jump, my whole body flinching. "You're lying," he said quietly, but there was something chilling in his voice, deep and cold. I opened my mouth to explain, but no words came. Then he shoved me. I hit the wall, not hard enough to break it, but enough to unsettle everything inside me. A flash of white raced across my vision. It felt like a switch flipped in my mind's back room. He kept speaking, accusing me of betrayal, ruining trust, dishonesty, but I couldn't hear a word. I slid down the wall, clutching my chest, not because of pain, but because I couldn't breathe. And then I realized this wasn't the first time he'd said those things, but it was the first time he'd put his hands on me. I did nothing, because I didn't know what else to do. That night, long after he'd gone to bed, I sat on the living room floor. I waited silently, barely breathing. Then I turned on my phone. I didn't call the police. I didn't text Rose. I just opened my notes app and typed one line. "This is not what marriage is supposed to be." Then I switched off the screen and curled up in the shadow beneath the couch, hugging my knees like a child waiting for dawn. Time sped up after that. Todd grew more volatile. His anger flared faster. Sometimes he hit me hard enough to send me to the ER. And still I went back. I kept returning home because I had nowhere else to go. One day, I timed everything down to the second. I waited in the bathroom, ears straining for the sound of his car pulling away, engine fading down the street. Only then did I step out. It wasn't the kind of fear that makes you scream or cry. It was a quiet terror, hollowing me out from the inside, cold and sticky. I leaned against the bathroom door and gripped my phone like a lifeline. I backed up a password-protected folder to my email. I hid a hospital report in the nightstand drawer. That was all I could manage, because honestly, I didn't believe help was coming. Until I heard her voice. My mom. She stood in the doorway, wrapped in her old trench coat, hair pulled back tight, not panicked, not breathless, just ready. I almost burst into tears. She pulled me into her arms, held me close, silent. And we began packing. She moved quickly, like she'd done this before. She found the hidden report without me needing to point. She helped me gather a few clothes. We took only what was necessary. If he noticed anything missing, it could unravel everything. Before we left, I paused. I glanced back at the apartment. The bed where I'd cried into my pillow night after night. The mirror where I'd written, "Just hold on a little longer" in red lipstick. The room I'd thought would be my sanctuary. I didn't cry. I didn't hesitate. I turned to Mom and said, "Let's go." As the car pulled away, I kept my head down. Not because I feared being seen, but because I didn't want her to see me break. But she saw anyway. She pulled over, turned around, and reached for my hand, fingers wrapping gently around mine. And then the tears came, hard and unstoppable, the kind you can't silence or swallow. "Mom," I choked, "I really tried. I'm not weak. I tried." "I know," she whispered softly. "I always knew," she said quietly. Tears spilled out of me as I confessed. It wasn't that I didn't want help. I was just so overwhelmed by shame. I couldn't even admit it to myself. She didn't offer empty comfort or tell me not to cry. Instead, she simply held my hand, steady and unwavering, silently saying, "You're not crazy. You're not the cause. You just haven't been pulled from the storm yet. And now, I'm here." In that first week after leaving, I barely managed full sentences. Mom never pressured me. She cooked, cleaned, and sometimes sat quietly beside me while the TV murmured in the background. She never pushed me to talk, but I knew she was waiting patiently. It wasn't fear keeping me silent. It was shame. I couldn't meet her gaze. When she'd turn to the kitchen, I'd sneak glances, searching her face for disappointment or frustration, wondering if she thought I'd wasted her time and care. But she just stayed, without a word of blame or interrogation. Never once did she ask, "Why didn't you speak up sooner?" And the quieter she was, the more it tore at me. I felt like a soaked matchstick, ready to ignite, desperate for flame. But all that came was a slow, clinging smoke. No blaze, no ashes, just stuck somewhere between. One night, I broke. "Mom," I said, turning to her, I knew he controlled me. I always knew. She wasn't shocked. She simply asked gently, "Then why didn't you leave?" My head dropped, my voice cracked, because I thought it was my fault. I wasn't successful enough, had few friends, was bad at social stuff, too emotional. I thought if I left, people would say, "See? She couldn't handle marriage." I worried you might think that too. She sat down next to me and squeezed my hand. "Joanna," she said softly but firmly, "just saying that out loud makes you braver than most. You're not a failure. You're not the problem. You're a girl who carried far too much of someone else's burden." The tears flowed again, fast and fierce. "I'm 36, Mom. I'm not a girl anymore." She pulled me close and whispered, "Then let me owe you a childhood. Let me give it back to you." That night, for the first time in years, I slept straight through without waking in terror. The days that followed were hard. I began therapy, reached out to old friends, updated my resume, and practiced for teaching interviews online. I tried to ignore the neighbors' whispers, avoided checking Todd's social media, skipped the comment sections where my name might appear. But deep down, I knew it wasn't realistic. Some nights, I'd wake gasping and whisper, "I'm sorry," into the dark. Those apologies weren't for him. They were for me, for every year I stayed, every boundary I let crumble, every lie I told myself just to survive. But slowly, I learned I couldn't live in "I'm sorry" forever. I survived. That's the most honest truth I can give myself. A few days later, Mom and I returned books at the town library. The clerk smiled. "Are you Madison Dawson's daughter? She's here all the time, helping with the kids section." I froze briefly, then nodded. "Yes, that's me." And just like that, I claimed an identity in public for the first time, not as someone's wife or shadow, but as someone's daughter. Someone. I realized identity isn't given, it's taken. I'm not the broken woman, not the stolen girl. I'm Joanna Dawson. I'm alive, and I'm building my life anew. Sometimes I think about Todd, not with anger or longing, but distance. He was a period, an ending. He shut the door on the most chaotic decade of my life, and for that I'm profoundly grateful. Grateful to the version of me who, in darkness, once typed, "This is not what marriage should be." Without that spark, maybe I'd still be whispering, "Just hold on a little longer." That sentence was the final ember refusing to die. Mom once told me her greatest fear wasn't Todd hunting me down. It was me ever saying, "He wasn't so bad." I laughed at that. I'd never say that. "How do you know?" she asked. I gripped her hand tight. "Because I'm done being the person everyone excuses. I want to own my life." She looked at me then. Her eyes gleamed. Neither of us said a word, but I knew she understood. This morning, I hung my sheets out to dry. The light was perfect. A gentle breeze drifted over the balcony, more than just drying cotton and linen. It washed away shame, fear, and the self-doubt I'd carried so long. I watched the sheets flutter, as if waving to me. "Joanna," I whispered, "this freedom is not the kind you flee toward after escape. It's the kind you stay for because you chose it. This freedom isn't accompanied by applause. No flowers, no dramatic score. But it's real, quiet, rooted in every choice I've made since I stopped waiting for permission to live. I know there's more ahead. Rebuilding, learning to trust, working, loving, letting others in. Maybe I'll get hurt. Maybe I'll love the wrong person. Maybe I'll stand in a crowd and feel alone. But I'm not afraid anymore, because I'm no longer waiting for someone else to tell me who I am. I'm back. I am Joanna, a woman standing fully in the sunlight,